You're going to die, and no one will remember that you ever existed. That's not a metaphor, it's a fact. Your name, your voice, your dreams, your body, even your social media, all of it will disappear. And the most humiliating part is, it won't matter. It never did. While you drag yourself out of bed to work at a job you hate, pay bills, swallow anxiety like poison, and fake smiles on the internet, the universe keeps spinning, cold, silent, and completely indifferent to your existence. Have you ever noticed that? The world doesn't care if you're sad. Your pain doesn't change a thing. The earth keeps turning, businesses keep opening, and people keep posting pictures with their fake happy faces, while inside, you're crumbling. This is the stage where humanity plays its big performance, a theater where everyone pretends life has meaning, even though the original script seems to have been written by a drunk sadist, or worse, by no one at all. The philosopher Emil Cioran once suggested that the very fact we were born is already a tragedy. We're not divine creations, we're the biological error of a chaotic system, creatures cursed with consciousness. While a dog sleeps peacefully on the sidewalk, you're lying awake at 3 a.m. asking yourself if any of this is worth it. Maybe the worst punishment isn't death. Maybe it's staying alive, fully awake, fully aware. Cioran didn't try to comfort us. He ripped away the veil of hope with violence, not to destroy, but to show. Life isn't beautiful. It never was. If you came here looking for easy answers, motivational quotes, or tricks to think positive, this isn't the place for you. But if you're searching for the truth, even if it stings like a needle on bone, then stay. Because today, we're going to look straight at what everyone else runs from. Life is brutal. And we'll be forgotten like idiots and insects. No achievement will survive the dust. Everything humanity has ever built, empires, cathedrals, rockets, constitutions, theories, will one day be nothing more than cosmic debris. This isn't pessimism. It's physics. It's biology. It's history. It's Cioran. You can write books, build companies, raise children, plant trees. You can even change the world. But the world itself will die too. And with it, you, your work, and your memory. There's no destiny guiding us, no divine plan, no cosmic purpose. We're here because of a genetic accident. We were born because matter made a mistake. To exist is to carry the echo of some ancient catastrophe, a tragedy repeated in billions of bodies, all headed toward rot. Have you ever thought about how pathetic that is? All our energy is poured into keeping a theater alive, a theater of purpose and productivity, while behind the curtain, there's only emptiness. The ancient Egyptians built pyramids to last forever. Time swallowed them. The Romans conquered the world. They're dust now. And us? We post stories, chase likes, try to be someone. We're just another failed attempt by the universe to make sense of itself. Cioran once wrote that if humanity still exists, it's because of inertia, cowardice, or stupidity. This machine we call life, this endless cycle of being born, suffering, working, and dying, has no center, no direction. It just spins, grinding billions of people, generation after generation, each one convinced this time things will change. But they don't. Look at history. Photos from the Vietnam War, the trenches of the World War I, the stacked corpses in concentration camps. These were people who believed they were fighting for a better future. Today, they're a footnote. Worse, no one really cares. The belief in progress is a cruel joke. If the human species disappeared today, the universe wouldn't notice. The silence would remain. Maybe it would even be cleaner. It's no surprise Cioran said life isn't something to celebrate, it's something to endure. He saw existence as a pointless noise in an indifferent cosmos, a machine without a goal, spinning until it falls apart. That's why sayings like "live each day as if it were your last" exist. They're not wisdom. They're marketing slogans. The truth is, each day lived is one step closer to decomposition. Lucidity isn't a gift, it's a curse. Knowing everything ends doesn't free us, it traps us, because there's no way out. No faith, no ideology, no wealth, no love, no pleasure can change the ending. Death is the only thing that truly belongs to us. And this brings us to one brutal truth. To live is to submit to a blind machine that leads nowhere. Consciousness isn't the prize of evolution, it's the final punishment. We're the only species aware that death is coming and that everything we love will disappear. The dog sleeps, the tree grows, and the human
thinks and rots from the inside. Cioran saw this not as poetry, but as diagnosis. Consciousness is worse than cancer. Being human means being haunted by thought, not the practical kind used to cross a street or solve problems, but the kind that digs deeper, that tears apart everything that once felt solid, the kind of thought that turns a mirror into a threat. Consciousness didn't give us control, it gave us agony. Have you ever tried meditating in absolute silence? Some call it peace, but stay long enough and what comes isn't relief, it's despair. Silence gives consciousness a clear voice, and what it says is everything we spend our lives trying not to hear. It tells us existence is a labyrinth without a center. No exit, no map. Knowing life has no meaning doesn't stop us from living, but it kills enthusiasm, and that's exactly what Cioran understood. He didn't see philosophy as salvation, he saw it as a kind of poison, a clarity so sharp it blinds. The cruel paradox is this: the more aware you are, the more you suffer. Modern neuroscience confirms something terrifying. The more active and connected a brain is, the more likely it is to suffer. The excess of thought fuels pain. It's not a romantic idea, it's measurable. People who think too much, who feel too much, who can't shut their minds off, often break. Friedrich Nietzsche went mad. David Foster Wallace ended his own life. Antonin Artaud spent his years locked between episodes and clinics. These weren't weak minds, they were minds that saw too clearly, minds that peeled back the illusion and couldn't stand what was underneath. Ignorance is light, awareness is heavy. Optimism isn't strength, it's escape. And in this cruel equation, the more we understand ourselves as a species, the more we despise what we are. We discover that at our core, we are just flesh that thinks about its own decay. Thinking is picking at the wound until it bleeds. This isn't a poetic exaggeration, it's the pure spirit of Cioran. Human suffering isn't an accident, it's the cost of having too much brain for a world that doesn't make sense. Religions, ideologies, and self-help narratives are just protective architecture, walls built to keep the horror out. Because to face life without illusions is like staring at an open corpse without turning your head. But there's something even more perverse. Even when we know this, we can't stop thinking. Once consciousness wakes up, it never goes back to sleep. It follows us to the end like a sleepless whisper in the dark. All of this is useless, and you know it. Everything you believe was created so you wouldn't lose your mind. God, justice, freedom, eternal love, higher purpose, life mission, none of these ideas were born from truth. They were born from fear. They're defense mechanisms invented by a terrified animal standing before the void. Hope isn't noble, it's a desperate reflex. Hope is the virtue of slaves. Everything that sustains civilization, politics, religion, patriotism, meritocracy is built on a trick. We pretend there's meaning behind pain, that suffering teaches something, that chaos has structure, that we're headed somewhere, but we're not. We're just surviving and lying to ourselves so we can keep breathing. Religion didn't come from a hunger for truth, it came from the refusal to accept death. God wasn't found, he was invented, not to liberate us, but to contain us, to stop the panic, to turn fear into rituals and emptiness into stories. Humanity created God because it couldn't handle the absurdity of living without justification. And ideologies are religions without heaven, but with promises. Communism promised a paradise on earth. Capitalism promised freedom and prosperity. Both promises bled into reality, not because they were applied incorrectly, but because every ideology is, by definition, a useful lie, a symbolic structure to give order to something that has none. The hope for a better world is a crutch for those who can't face the truth.
The world won't get better. Humanity won't evolve. Suffering has no purpose. Cioran wrote, "Only desperate ideas have value. The rest exist to fool fools or enslave crowds. Waiting for salvation, whether divine or political, is like waiting for fire to stop burning. It won't. Pain is part of the structure. Collapse is built into the system. And even on a personal level, hope wears the mask of positivity. The self-help industry sells happiness like a product. It promises meaning, balance, inner peace with slogans and shortcuts. But what it delivers is anesthesia, encapsulated thoughts designed to choke any suspicion that life might not be worth the effort. Hope is the drug that allows us to endure the unbearable, not because things will get better, but because accepting the opposite would mean facing the complete failure of the human condition. Despair without hope is the only true clarity. We've been trained to resist the truth, and the greatest truth is this: life has nowhere to go, and promises are crutches for those who can't walk on the edge. History isn't a record of human greatness. It's the slow, sophisticated evolution of pain. What we call progress is just a more technical, efficient, organized way of suffering. From stones to nuclear bombs, what changed wasn't our nature, only the tools of destruction. History isn't a book of victories. It's a long chain of carnage. And buried beneath flags, anthems, and statues, almost no one asks, why did so much blood have to be spilled just so someone could feel important? History is the most dangerous product the human mind ever made. It gives horror meaning. It turns massacres into beauty. It invents heroes out of well-organized killers. It transforms genocides into founding myths, torturers into liberators, wars into progress. Think about how every world power was built on mountains of corpses. United States, colonization, slavery, Hiroshima. France, revolutions, guillotines, colonialism. Germany, Nazism, gas chambers, proud technology. Russia, Tsarism, gulags, Stalin. Brazil destroyed quilombos, erased indigenous people, children starving while palaces shine. What do we learn from all this? Nothing. We still believe in the fairy tale of moral evolution, as if time owes us ethics. The World War I killed 16 million people. 20 years later, we killed 70 million in the World War II. Today, we have nuclear weapons that can erase continents in minutes. We call it strategic defense. It's the same tribal instinct now with a red button. Humanity invented history to forgive itself, but there's no forgiveness when suffering repeats itself so faithfully. Civilization is just a thin coat of paint over constant barbarism. History doesn't redeem us, it condemns us, because the only legacy we've left consistently is pain. And if you think we're better now, look around. Millions of refugees without a home, modern slavery disguised as markets, children making cell phones for adults to post selfies. Call it globalization if you want. Cioran would call it the victory of stupidity as the world's order. There's no progress, just repetition with new packaging. History doesn't walk forward. It spins in circles, always making the same mistake and pretending it's something new. Suffering isn't an error in the system. It is the system. Civilizations rise on pain, maintain themselves through illusion, and collapse into silence. We build monuments to disguise the graveyards beneath them. Every empire is a graveyard with better architecture. Hope is the cement. Lies are the foundation. The human story is a cycle of delusion polished to look like destiny. People talk about the future as if it's a promise, not a grave waiting patiently. They talk about humanity as if it's heading somewhere, upward, forward, higher. But history is not a line. It's a spiral around the same abyss. And we keep walking in circles, convincing ourselves it's progress. Emil Cioran once said, "We are born to disappointment." That's not poetry. It's anatomy. From the first cry to the last breath, the structure is always the same. We build illusions, we defend them, we collapse with them. Every ideology begins as hope and ends as horror. Every revolution starts with justice and ends with blood. Every religion begins as salvation and ends as control. We don't evolve beyond this. We only give the same mistake a prettier name. We think pain is a phase, but pain is the architect. Everything else is decoration. Even love, our most sacred fiction, is often just fear dressed in poetry. Fear of being alone, fear of death, fear of the void. We don't love because we're noble. We love because we're terrified. And because we're terrified, we cling to anything that gives weight to our days. But everything slips, everything leaves, everything dies. And in the end, all the poems, prayers, and political manifestos are just noise trying to cover the silence underneath. The silence always wins. We invented meaning the way a child invents monsters under the bed because the unknown without a story is unbearable. God is a story.
The nation is a story. The self is a story. All fragile, all temporary, all desperately defended. And the cruelest part? We know. Deep down, we all know. That's why we cling harder. The more fragile the lie, the louder the defense. That's why people fight for gods they've never seen, die for countries they didn't choose, kill for ideologies they barely understand. It's not faith, it's fear. The louder they scream, the more fragile their belief. The stronger the illusion, the more violence it needs to sustain itself. The human animal cannot live without a lie, because without the lie, there's only the void. And the void does not negotiate. It does not care. It doesn't offer forgiveness, meaning, or purpose. It just stares back, silently. That's why hope is worshipped like a god. Hope keeps the world spinning, not because it changes anything, but because without it, everything would stop. If people truly accepted that nothing matters, society would disintegrate overnight. Work would end, nations would dissolve, families would crumble, religion would lose its last prayer. Everything functions because we pretend. The factory of illusion runs 24/7, producing dreams to keep us busy while the abyss waits with infinite patience. Despair is not dangerous because it's wrong. It's dangerous because it's right, and truth is unbearable for most. That's why society punishes those who speak it too clearly. It doesn't want clarity, it wants anesthesia. Philosophers, poets, and madmen who stripped away the mask were always silenced, ridiculed, or broken. They didn't fit in the play. They burned the script. But in their ashes, they carried the only honest knowledge. Existence is a wound that never heals, and meaning is the bandage that stops us from seeing the blood. In the end, the most terrifying thing is not death, not war, not pain. It's the realization that everything we built to escape the void is made of paper, and paper burns easily, and so we keep performing. Each generation inherits the same stage, the same lines, the same applause for the same lies. We call it culture, we call it progress, but it's just the same fragile play rehearsed endlessly so no one has to look behind the curtain. Behind it, there's nothing, only silence, only void. The system doesn't demand truth. It demands participation. Schools teach obedience, not wisdom. Work teaches survival, not freedom. Religion teaches comfort, not clarity. Politics teaches division, not justice. All of it is theater. And the actors don't even know they're on stage. That's the trick. The best performance is the one the performer believes is real. That's why the machine works. That's why the lie endures. Most people don't wake up, not because they can't, but because waking up would destroy everything they've built. Comfort is stronger than truth. Illusion is kinder than clarity. The system doesn't fear rebels. It fears people who no longer play. Someone who no longer believes is uncontrollable. They can't be bribed with hope. They can't be tamed with fear. They see the structure for what it is, a fragile cage built to distract us from the fact that we are already falling. The cage was never meant to save us. It was meant to make us forget we're falling. And what's worse is that even those who wake up remain trapped. Knowing the truth doesn't grant escape. It only removes the anesthesia. Life doesn't change, only the illusion does. You still breathe, still work, still age, still die. But now you know why. Awareness is not liberation. It's a sentence without appeal. That's why so many thinkers ended in despair or silence. Arthur Schopenhauer drowned in pessimism. Emil Cioran wrote like someone holding a blade to existence itself. Friedrich Nietzsche screamed into the void until the void screamed back. They didn't find salvation in thought. They found the unbearable clarity that nothing waits at the end of the road. Hope dies first for those who look too closely. And without hope, you see things as they are, temporary, pointless, fragile. The world becomes unbearably honest. People cling to ideologies, to flags, to faith, because they can't bear to see how empty everything really is. That's why truth is not welcomed. That's why most will always choose a comforting lie over a brutal fact. Hope gives them a reason to keep moving. Truth offers no such mercy.
But within this darkness, there's a strange kind of peace. Not the peace of salvation, the peace of surrender. When you stop searching for meaning, the universe stops demanding explanations. When you stop clinging to hope, you stop bleeding for what will never come. The void doesn't love or hate, it simply is. And in that, there's a brutal kind of honesty. Maybe not a cure, but an end to the performance. To stare at nothing and no longer need a story, that's the final rebellion. Not revolution, not faith, not utopia, just silence. The quiet understanding that we were always dust, pretending to be destiny. We build our lives like fortresses against the inevitable. We cling to plans, dreams, and futures as if they're real, as if anything we create can outlive the silence that swallows everything. But everything collapses. Every empire, every love, every self. Nothing escapes the erosion of time. What we call a life is just a brief flicker between two voids, and the stories we tell ourselves are scaffolding built to give shape to that flicker. We give names to chaos so it feels like order. We build meaning around pain so it feels like it has a purpose. But the universe doesn't care. It doesn't reward, punish, or listen. It doesn't even notice us. We are the noise in a quiet universe. And even our noise will be forgotten. Every book will rot. Every language will vanish. Every memory will dissolve. Even the stars will die. And yet, we act as if our tiny moments matter on a cosmic scale. We build monuments to ourselves, but they're just sandcastles against a tide that never stops. What's cruel is not the ending. It's the pretending. The pretending that there's some grand design, some cosmic justice, some hidden logic. But there is none. Arthur Schopenhauer called life a mistake. Emil Cioran called it a wound that never heals. They weren't being dramatic. They were describing a structure. Consciousness is a tragedy. To know you exist is to know you will end. To love is to know you will lose. To hope is to build on sand. And yet, paradoxically, we can't help ourselves. The same awareness that condemns us also forces us to create. We invent gods, philosophies, revolutions, art, not because they're true, but because we can't live without pretending they are. The human animal is addicted to illusion, because illusion is softer than truth. Even nihilism can become a kind of religion, a belief in the absence of belief. Even despair can be decorated with meaning. There's no true escape, only different masks. The only thing that remains untouched beneath all the stories is the void itself. Indifferent, unmoved, absolute. And that's where the real horror lies. It doesn't fight us. It doesn't chase us. It simply waits. And in the end, everything returns to it. We don't conquer the void. We don't transcend it. We dissolve into it. All our prayers, our wars, our dreams, our philosophies, they were just echoes against a wall that never spoke back. And perhaps the most honest sentence ever spoken is this: nothing matters. But this isn't despair. It's clarity. Despair is what happens when we still want the universe to care. Clarity is what happens when we finally accept that it doesn't. When the illusions burn away, what remains isn't a grand truth, but silence. Not a paradise, not a punishment, just silence. And maybe, just maybe, that's all there ever was.